What's going on, all you Minties? This is the Uncanny Omar.
And Astonishing Melanie.
And today we are here to do an overview of the Absolute Sandman Collection from DC Comics.
We're going to talk about why we love this story, it's so wonderful, and why we picked the Absolute Editions as our choice of collecting them.
So this is a video that a lot of people have been asking me to do for quite a number of years now. For some reason,
I don't know. It always slipped through the cracks.
Yeah, we did the annotated review, and you've done your top 10.
First one.
Maybe I was waiting for the Sandman series to actually come out before I do it. I don't know. No, really, it just kind of slipped through the cracks. What we're looking at here is the 7-book collection of Sandman. Really, if you just want to read Sandman, the main story, all 75 issues are collected within the first 4 Absolute editions. This is the 5th edition, which has a lot of the side stories that he wrote. And then there's Death, which was the miniseries collected in here, and then Overture, which was a series released in 2013. That kind of, well, it's supposed to take place before this one, but why would you read it like that? So each one of these comes in this beautiful slipcase edition. The one thing I do want you to keep in mind is that the newer printings will have the Black Label logo on them, because sadly Vertigo does not exist anymore, only in our hearts. And we have a brand new image on them too that were created just for this. So
that's Dave McKean, correct?
Yes, Dave McKean still doing the images for the covers.
Very distinctive art style that definitely fits the mood and the theme and the atmosphere of the Sandman series.
And we're going to crack some of these open to talk about the stories in here a little bit without going into spoilers and showing off the artwork and what you can expect in here. But before we do, I just want you to look at how beautiful this looks. This is, of course, it's, I guess, fall leather, right? It's not real leather,
but leather.
Faux leather.
It has this, not indentations, but the bumps, the texture here, as in collectible prose books are sometimes have.
Yeah, absolutely, on the spine. I love that. But each one also comes with a ribbon right there, and we're going to look at the binding on the books here in a little bit.
It does have embossed the symbols that you see on the side here. I mean, not exactly, but the same type of symbols.
And it is really cool because each one of them, as you can see on the spines, have a different symbol. Like, so we'll look at this one here from volume number 4, which is the final volume. But even the Vertigo logo is embossed down there. But if you look here, there's a different symbol than in volume 1. Sorry.
You got 2 keys and an open lock.
What does that mean? All right. So we're going to crack these.
And the lock has the Ankh symbol. Ankh, death symbol.
So,
which is life.
So the reason we decided to go with the Absolute Editions instead of the Omnibus Editions is because, to me, the Absolute Editions are the top tier of collected editions at DC Comics. There's nothing wrong with the Omnibus Editions. As a matter of fact, I want to thank my Patreons, Steven, Frazier, Chris, Dean, and Anthony, for sending me really detailed pictures of what these Omnis look like. Now, there's a total of 3 of them. Some of them will have the Vertigo logo. Some of them will have the Black Label logo if they've been reprinted. But as you can see, they're beautiful collections on their own. There are no slipcases, unlike the Absolute Editions, and art on board. But they look completely beautiful on your bookshelf nonetheless. I think there's just something really special about Sandman that you have to have these wonderful looking books. So these really stand out on your bookshelf. But the reason I decided to go with these is because, yes, oversized artwork. And while the artwork is aged, it still feels really special to me. So we're going to crack some of these open, showcase some of the artwork. We're going to do a comparison for your old school folks that haven't bought any of the collections and remember Sandman from buying them in single issues. And you're going to see some of the changes that they've made in the newer printings. And it all started with these, actually. The Absolute Editions is where they decided to do the new updated colors. All supervised by Neil Gaiman.
And I don't agree with some of the color changes.
Me as well. All right, cracking this open. There's your bookend paper. I love this type of paper right here. This is, what is this called? Is it rice paper? Where's transparent?
Sure.
Sure.
It's papyrus.
I don't think that's what it is. The Absolute Sandman Volume 1.
There is so much art, like just practical on every page, except for that see-through paper. In the comments, you can let us know what it's called. But it's just, wow. Every page is a work of love.
Absolutely. There's an introduction by Paul Levitz, who's editor at the time when all this started, and I'll talk about how all this got started. The covers are collected, completely textless, so you don't have the Sandman logo, the issue number. And then
that was the first cover?
Yeah.
Huh.
This is where it all began. In 1988. Well, it came out in 88, but the publishing date was like January of 89. So this was during the time at DC when they were going through something called the British Invasion. Post-Crisis on Infinite Earths. The DC editors are like, okay, we need to get new blood in here. We need to start getting some new writers. Let's go grab everybody that's ever written in the UK and bring them over to America and let them write stories. So, of course, we had things like Alan Moore's Swamp Thing. But this one here stood out because it was Neil Gaiman. He had written a story or a miniseries called Black Orchid.
That's in the trailer for the show.
Yeah, there's a lot of imagery here that's grabbed for the Sandman show. At least what we've seen. We haven't seen the show yet, so that's something we're going to do.
She's important.
So, Sandman was an idea that was kind of started by him and Karen Berger. Karen Berger was she was the big editor at the time of what eventually became known as Vertigo. Because believe it or not, the first 40-something issues were published under the DC label and not Vertigo label. And you're going to see a lot of characters through these pages that are very familiar. Wesley Dodds right there.
Sandman.
The Golden Age Sandman. To you, but there's also superheroes, which is why I think some people have a hard time starting with the first few stories, because they're always told that, hey, these stories are kind of like their own little pocket universe. They take place in their own little world. There are no Superman or Batman characters in there. That's not usually the case in the first few stories.
And there aren't that many cameos, seriously. It's its own story.
But the cameos that are in here are important. There was a 70 series of Sandman that's thrown in here. The Infinity Inc. characters are thrown in here for a particular reason. Here, let's skip some pages. So it all starts by Sam Keith. He's the artist on the book. Again, Neil Gaiman writing every single one of these issues. And to kind of give you a brief synopsis of what all of this is. Oh my gosh. That is so freaking awesome.
We'll talk about the comparisons of the art here in a minute.
Yeah.
Especially with this issue. So let me tell you about Sandman. He's not called Sandman within the book per se. Maybe once, I don't know. He's Morpheus. He's Dream. He is part of the Endless, which are 7 anthropomorphic... I can't say it. Anthropomorphic...
Now you got me.
Personifications. You know what I mean.
Anthropomorphic.
Anthropomorphic.
Oh my gosh.
He's Dream. He controls dreams, right? We've got his sister Death. They're all siblings. And they all start with a D. We have Destiny, Desire, Despair, Destruction, and Delirium.
And Death, his sister, is actually based on a real person. It was Cinnamon Hadley. She was friends with the artist Mike Dragenberg. So Neil Gaiman was like, yeah, let's do it. She was a goth model, I think.
And then she looked through a comic at a party, a Sandman comic. It was like, oh, that's me.
Yeah.
She didn't know or forgot or something.
I think she passed away a couple of years ago, and Neil Gaiman and the artists like Sam Keith and Mike were selling artwork, original artwork, to help her with money situation. I thought that was a really sweet thing. But she was the model for Death. And there are a lot of, I think, inspirations in here for several of these characters that appear throughout this book.
So the Endless are the main characters, specifically Dream. However, there are stories that are solely focused on humans, or they have like a whole 7-8 issue story arc. And of course, the Endless are involved. However, sometimes it's a single issue, and the Endless aren't really involved.
Yeah, it's almost like the Endless take a backseat sometimes to tell human stories, but it's more than just humans. I mean, there's cat stories in here that will just break your heart. And I mentioned Sam Keith at the beginning, and then I mentioned that Mike Dreigenberg eventually took over the book, but there's also other artists like Malcolm Jones and eventually Kelly Jones, Pete Craig Russell. He got to work with Yoshitaka Amano on one of the it was like a one-shot book, and J.H. Williams in Overture, Chris Bocciolo, and Mark Buckingham. So there's a lot of talent that went into these particular stories and books. So now we're going to be looking at volume number 2. And all these come with an introduction.
Wait. That's what I was looking for. Each picture of the Endless here. Is it... There we go. So, Desire, Despair, Destiny, Delirium, Dream, Death. Oh! Notice how somebody's missing. Destruction.
Spoilers for who Destruction is. And to me, I think this was a groundbreaking comic for many reasons. This is the comic that got a lot of people that weren't the stereotypical comic book readers into comic book stores. I was working at a comic book store from 1994, but before that I was volunteering. So I just remember the people that would get this particular comic were women in their 20s. And it was the only book they were getting. They weren't getting Superman, they weren't getting X-Men, no matter how many times I try to sell them those. They were getting Sandman, and that was it. And then some of them would venture into Sandman Mystery Theater or The Dreaming, but it was Sandman that brought them in. And I think that's mainly due to the way that Neil Gaiman writes these stories. This is one of my favorite covers. Also creeps me the hell out, by the way, this new cover to Volume 3. So this is what the art looks like in here. And one of the biggest questions that I get is, do you need to be a fan or have read anything before jumping on and reading Sandman?
No.
No. You don't even need to have read comics in general, I don't think, because the way that this stories is done is so... It reads like a prose.
Now, I will mention that somebody commented that he wished that he knew more of the Greek references here and fable references and mythology references. So yes, that is an addition. However, you still understand the story and you'll enjoy it.
Now, some of these, like here in Volume 3, have little backup stories that were featured elsewhere. But every single one of these volumes, besides coming in a beautiful slipcase, have extras in the back. Pin-ups and just different artists' portrayal of the characters. This one here is by Todd Mcfarlane. And yeah, this is a beautiful presentation and oversized artwork. And I've done a comparison. Oh, these are the little statues. My brother still has this set. I've done a comparison on the different collected editions. And just in case you didn't see that video, these are bigger as far as the dimensions of the paper than the omnibus editions. And to me, it's just a beautiful presentation. So you have, the initial artwork for the statues here. This one, of course, based on P. Craig Russell's wonderful artwork. And then what it eventually looked like, the toys. Yeah, this is just such a perfect collection. And then there's bios on the creators all the way in the back. And then each one of these books have these type of extras, as well as the ribbon. We love ribbons on this channel. Cracking open Volume 4 here. By the way, each one of these now retails for $125. I think when they originally came out, they were $100. With the exception of Death. Absolute Death, I think, is still $100. But all of the other books are $125.
Now, there are so many artists on this book, and I feel like that really is perfect for the story because it's about change and how Dream changes and all the characters, right? And also, he's Dream. Your dreams are, is the right word nebulous?
No, I think nebulous is the perfect word to describe this. I think I'm with you. I like the different art styles. I think when I was younger, I didn't appreciate it as much.
Oh, there's Fiddler's Green. I forgot he talked to him again.
But what I was saying is, do you need to have read anything? No, absolutely not. I think this teaches you to go back and, research some of these stories.
Surreal. Dreams are surreal, and the artwork changing, and sometimes it's surreal.
Yeah. Good choice of words, but I still like nebulous. But I think makes you want to go and research like all this Norse mythology, the Greek mythology, all the characters that appear in here, like Cain and Abel, all these
Oh,
characters
yeah.
that were part of Swamp Thing, that were featured in Swamp Thing, or John Constantine. John Constantine makes an appearance here.
That's in volume 1. John Constantine's in volume 1 for a few
That's right.
issues.
And then Dream himself makes an appearance in an issue of Hellblazer. This is volume 5, which has the extra stories in here. And again, because the Endless sometimes take a back seat in the main story arc of all 75 issues of Sandman, that's what these stories are kind of like. They focus more on other characters.
Look at Yashitaka Mano.
Yeah, famous because of course, Final Fantasy and Vampire Hunter D. But there's other stories in here, too. There's P. Craig Russell's artwork.
Oh, I like The Heart of a Star.
Yeah, that's a good one. So there's a lot of endless type of stories in this particular volume. This is volume 5. Is it 100% necessary to own? No, but you'll definitely want it to add to your collection because you'll want so much more when you're done reading Sandman. When you're done with issue 75, you'll crave more. Let's move on to the miniseries. Now, this is the thinnest one. I don't know about the latest printing, though, but Melanie's touching it. Why are you touching it like that?
It's velvety. And
Yeah.
the embossing of the, like, kind of crude Ankh is here as well. But yeah, this one is a little different. It doesn't have the faux leather there.
Now, I don't know if the newer printing has this, though. I don't know if the newer printing will have that, or if they go back to the faux leather look all around. But this contains the Death miniseries. It contains her first appearance. So there's a little double
Issue 8
dipping.
of Sandman is here at the beginning, which makes sense.
It's The Sound of Her Wings, man. One of the greatest Sandman stories.
And I saw in the trailer that there is a sound of her wings.
So it features like death heavy stories. Go ahead.
This story of Element Girl, man, it is rough.
Yeah, that one's rough.
But it's a happy, sad ending. I don't really want to get into it because it's very complicated. And I'm not necessarily condoning what happens at the end. But it's definitely romanticized.
I will say that, we talk about how this reads. To me, it reads like a novel. It reads like a dream. But there are characters in here that appear, and you will fall in love with her. Like, there's a character in here, I don't want to spoil it, but the more that he sees Death, the more he falls in love with Death. And almost becomes an obsession. And it's such a sad story. Here, let's go on to the next story arc. This was done a few years later. So this has both of the Death miniseries. She was just such a popular character, he wanted to expand more stories. And instead of doing it within the pages of Sandman, he did 2 little miniseries
and there are
featuring
characters
her.
from Sandman, the humans, that are in the Death miniseries.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I love these. Just look at how many
Checkerboard.
panel grids there are there. And that's one of my favorite pictures right there. I think that's one that Mark Buckingham drew for you, if I'm not mistaken. It looks very similar to your poster you have.
Yes, he didn't draw it for me specifically. It was a
Okay,
print.
my bad.
But that would be amazing.
I don't have that much money. And last but certainly not least is the Sandman Overture.
And I'm just going to reach across here and show how this definitely has more colors than the others. Like even the top is brighter than the other boxes.
And that's mainly due to the artist J.H. Williams. One of my top 3 favorite artists of all time. And I was asked a very important, serious question. If Neil Gaiman would go back and let J.H. Williams redraw Sandman, all 75 issues, would that be a good idea?
That would be a feat.
Well, when you look at J.H. Williams' artwork, you're going to be like, okay, there's only one person that could probably do it. Because he has this amazing, uncanny ability to mimic other people's art style. He's insane. He is a machine.
Well, if he's going to mimic it, then what's the point?
Well, and my answer was no, because there's something special about the way that Sandman looked. The fold-out pages are all intact.
I love this.
Oh
you
my
can't
gosh,
see
this
it
is-
all, but all these characters.
But just even when in this page, just look at the different art styles that he's able to just recreate.
Yeah, that's a great point.
He is an amazing artist. Now, there's just something special about that. Now, this is Overture. This came out in 2013. Like I mentioned, Sandman came out in 1989. and it went on 75 issues, and then Neil Gaiman said, no, I'd rather, he is quoted for, like,
Gorgeous.
what did he say? It was something along the lines of, I'd rather end it and be in love with it than come back every 5 years with a miniseries, just because people want me to. But he did come back for this. Now, Overture is interesting because it's a prequel to Sandman. This is a story of how Morpheus ends up getting captured, what made him weak enough to get captured in the first... Well, when you see him, he's in prison in Volume 1 or issue number 1 of Sandman. But this is the type of artwork that is in here. And when I said, like, yeah, you're not going to want death, absolute death, it's not necessary, or the 5th Sandman book, or Overture, but when you look inside and when you finish reading it and you fall in love, you'll definitely want to add them to your collection. Now, these are all collected in the 3 omnis that I talked about. They use the same masters for the colors. As a matter of fact, every printing, the thick trade paperbacks, the skinny trade paperbacks, since the Absolute editions have used the new color masters. So the only way to get the old color masters would be to get the old trade paperbacks, which we're going to look at here in a second. But before we do a comparison, let's look at this binding, because that is very important when it comes to these big books. We'll take one of the oldest ones that I have.
Now that I've learned from the Uncanny Omar, that is sewn binding. And look at that eye.
Sewn binding, yes, that is. Look at that big eye. You know, each book ranges anywhere from 300 to 400 plus pages.
And in case you don't know why the eye is important, it's how big it is determines how flat it will lay when you're reading it.
Yeah. So, we've seen big books over 1,200 pages that have a horrible eye. We've seen skinny books that have wonderful eyes. And depending on the binding, it's how the book lays over, because you don't want that gutter loss, especially when you get the things like Overture that have so many spread pages. Now what we're going to do is show you the comparison to the early volumes released that are closer to the comic book look.
So here are the first 5 hardcovers. I've got the others over here that came out, I don't know when. However, these are in a very loved condition because I would let my students years ago borrow them and read them at home.
High school students.
And told them, don't let your parents know that you are reading them. Now, some of these kind of like that is the same format, right? Or the same look. However, then they change around. Omar, was that because I just got random ones, or?
So each one of these that you're looking at right now is a different print run. Like, this is one of the older ones right here.
Okay.
Because Sandman, unlike a lot of collected editions, is one of the oldest collected editions at DC's. It was like Sandman, and then of course we had Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns. That was it when it came to collected editions. And then these were some of the latest printings that came out in the early aughts.
And then there are also trade paperback versions, which are loved as well. And don't forget this bad boy. There are 3 volumes of the Annotated Sandman. You can check out the review that Omar and I did like a couple of years ago. Annotations on the side there. And as you can see, they are in black and white. With the annotations, it could be like what's happening in history at that time period that Neil Gaiman set it in, or it could be a note in the script that Neil Gaiman wrote. I think this is valuable. However, it wasn't quite what I was looking for. And I'm not quite sure what it was I was looking for. I just remember the annotations, I wanted them to be about other topics than what it was. But if you love annotations like me, you should check this out. When I was going through the hardcovers for my top 10 Sandman moments and then finding them in the Absolute, I definitely noticed the difference in the coloring. So let's start with the issue of when Morpheus first goes to hell.
I think this one is very important. This showcases why they decided to update the color again under the supervision of Gaiman, because over here is a mesh of monsters, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. They all look wonderful and beautiful and detailed. But over here, you can see their individual demons.
Yes. So I do like this choice with the coloring. That this is nostalgic.
Absolutely.
However, the art definitely is pops, and it's better showcased over here.
But what the same thing that happened in Absolute Swamp Thing. This is the way that I remember it. Mm-hmm. So when I was reading this for the first time, I was like, wait a minute, that doesn't look right. That looks a little bit off.
It's definitely brighter. Like, okay, here they filled in the horse and the rider in blue, even though it was pink, and then filled these in. Which, here. Okay.
The demons, again, standing out. It's not just one mesh color.
This is kind of, definitely more colors used, right? And this one, not as bright a palette, but she's blue over here, and over here she's brown.
And we're just going to flip through some more pages to kind of give you an idea.
Now, this one makes sense. The demon is saying he's anti-life. He is still the same color of being like a supernova over here. And the light is shining so bright on Morpheus, that makes sense. However, they changed it to anti-life being a dull grayish blue color. And okay, yeah, I get that. The flip side of the argument is this is very vague, and in hell it's like this surreal place, whereas here you can definitely see the monsters better. So there's that argument.
I will add that too, that over here the monsters are one dark cloud almost. And almost creepier because you don't know
together.
You don't know what's out there in the unknown, right? It's the fear of the unknown. Whereas here, they're almost a little too colorful for demons. Like even if we go back to this page, right? I know they're using darker tones, but it's almost like it's too much color for demons that I'm used to. I kind of like the mask, honestly, the way that it looked there.
Yeah, it looks better. It looks better there.
I guess this is more realistic, right? If you're going to go, well, I guess realism.
Look, more the bright colors for the demons, agony and ecstasy.
Yeah,
I like these better.
But then again, a lot of it has to do with nostalgia and the way that I remember.
I like the red background over here.
Right, if you're in hell, then that makes sense.
Oh, we could go all day with this.
Maybe we should just do a video on the comparison of colors. Yeah. But again, this is comics, right? This is the way that you got single issues. This is every printing since the Absolute.
Let us know in the comments if you would like us to go more in depth with the color differences. Let's show one more issue.
So in the Absolute, it's again textless. Over there, they put the actual chapter name.
Colors more vibrant, not as muted.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the roses being red, or flowers or whatever, that's nice, because later on I was confused as to what was in Def's hair. I was like, is that a butterfly? But now they're red. But look at these pretty colors that aren't there anymore. Mm-hmm. This is not blue. You got white over here, which makes sense. It's like Death is black and white. Dream is, a dark blue and white. That it's kind of the theme of the colors throughout here, but he's got more blue in his hair here as opposed to there.
This is something that I'm glad they did for the new colors too, is that they didn't add clouds or backgrounds to this, because they very well could have, and I think it would have definitely taken away from these particular scenes.
Okay, so what I'm talking about is here, I was like, is that a butterfly? What's in her hair? She had put a flower in her hair and I didn't notice, and now you could tell because it's red.
So I was okay with that, with no colors in the background. But here, I really thought that when I was reading this, when I was younger, I thought, okay, the day is getting longer. They are now sitting there and it's the afternoon. The sun is starting to set. And here it's just kind of timeless, the space that they're in.
I love this panel. Ooh, give me strength. That's how I feel sometimes.
Here's another volume. I believe this is issue 44, if I'm not mistaken, but I probably am. And Melanie?
You could definitely see Death's reflection better over here because of the blue. I do like the blue and the brighter colors here. And let me turn the page so we can take a look at Delirium and her colors, which are basically the same. They're a little brighter here.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, they're not that big of a difference or that drastic in every issue, but there are subtle differences, of course.
And I can see why the earlier issues would have more drastic color changes.
Because they're older?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. But again, all of it under Gaiman supervision, so nothing really crazy. I really like the just pale white here of Desire, because they have a human flesh tone over here, and over here it's just white like the rest of the Endless. So it makes sense. Man, this is gorgeous. And honestly, that is beautiful colors. But, this is the reason why we keep the hardcovers, because we love the original colors. The original colors are the way that we read them. This, just because I love oversized format, and it's a beautiful presentation.
And that, as they say, is that. If you're interested in purchasing these, please check out our sponsors. However, do keep in mind Vertigo doesn't exist anymore, so the label will look different at the bottom. If you live in Europe and are interested in buying and pre-ordering Omnis, then you should definitely check out Walt's Comic Shop in Berlin, Germany. They have the cheapest pre-order prices for Marvel and DC books within the EU, flat shipping rates of €11.90 for all EU countries, great customer service with sturdy packaging and emails answered within 24 hours. They also offer a superb selection of new titles and out-of-print books. Just head over to waltscomicshop.com for more great deals and rare titles. For a limited time, you can use the code NEARMINTCONDITION, all one word, at checkout and get a €10 voucher for your first order over €40. Walt's Comic Shop, your reliable source for Omnis and premium collected editions in Europe. Ting!
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget, the CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
And that was the content and build of not only the Absolutes, but the other editions as well. And we're going to sign off and go watch Sandman on Netflix.
But before we do, don't forget to smash that like button, please. And
the smash button.
Yeah, and let us know how you collect Sandman, whether you got the omnibus, the thick trade paperbacks, the Absolute editions, the old school trade paperbacks, or you just kept your single issues. Nothing wrong with that.
And as always, stay minty.